welcome everybody. My name is Mrunal Sisodia. I'm one of the co-chairs of the NNPCF. And this morning we're going to go through the NNPCF AGM. This isn't a formal AGM, so it's not a constituted meeting, but it's really an opportunity for us to update you on what we've been doing this year, and also share with you some of our plans for next year. And more than share, actually, we're hoping that we can co-produce some of those plans with you. We've been doing some co-production activities before this session, and we are actually going to try and run part of this session interactively as well. So yesterday we heard from our colleagues in the NHS and very importantly from the Secretary of State and also the Children and Families Minister, Will Quince. This afternoon, we're carrying some of those themes on and talking about the NNPCF input into the SEND review. But this morning, we're just actually going to reflect on the past year and think a little bit about what we're up to in the coming year. So you'll be pleased to know that it's not just me doing all the talking today. There's a number of colleagues who are joining me from our management team and from the steering group. I'll introduce those people as we go, but without any further ado, I'll get going, if I may, and take you through what we've got planned for you in today's session. So starting off, we're going to do a review of the last year. I'll lead that, and we'll look through what our priorities were and the work we did against those priorities. We're also then going to look forward into co-producing our priorities for next year, and Kay Moore, who is our policy and consultations lead, will be taking you through that. And then we've been doing a little bit of work with our stakeholders, including other parent carer forums, around the values and core principles of the NNPCF, updating those and really refreshing those in this new environment. And the steering group members, Kath Bromfield and Jane Fitzgerald, are going to lead you through that. So we've got an action-packed hour coming up. So hopefully you'll find it interesting, informative. And let's start with the review of the year. So before we get started, I think we just want to put some context out there. We are all very painfully aware that things are really, really tough in the world of SEND at the minute. It's tough on families who are living with SEND, and that includes all of us. It's also very tough for parent carer forums. In this session, we're not actually going to spend a lot of time talking about that. That's because there's a huge focus on that in this afternoon's session, when we're covering the SEND review and the NNPCF input into that. And we're going into quite some depth around what we think is wrong in the SEND system, what the lived experience of families are. So we're not going to dwell on that in this session this morning. This session is actually much more about taking a moment to reflect on the difference that parent carer forums have made and how we might want to continue to make that difference in the next year. So forgive me if the tone of this session seems at odds to some of the work that you're doing, but we felt it was almost just a moment important to take a moment and take some time out and just say, actually, we do make a difference. So what difference have we made? A review of the year. At the start of last year, around this time last year, in our conference in March, we presented to you our 4 priorities for the coming year. They were support and recovery from COVID-19, the NHS long-term plan, improving accountability in the SEND system, and the SEND review. We based these priorities very much on the feedback we were getting from parent carer forums. And let's just step through each one of these, and I can talk a little bit about the work we've been doing in addressing and progressing these priorities. So first off, the support and recovery from COVID-19. These slides will be sent out, so you'll have them. So I'm not planning to step through every single bullet here, but I just wanted to draw out a few things of the work we've been doing. So let's be clear, COVID-19 has just dominated the world of SEND and our lives for the last 2 years. 2 years ago, we set ourselves at the NNPCF a very ambitious, forward-looking business plan, and the first thing we did in April 2020 was tear it up. And frankly, we have been responding and reacting to the world of COVID and the changes in the COVID environment ever since. So COVID has been overwhelmingly the biggest focus for the NNPCF over the last 2 years and even the last year. We are just starting to emerge from that, whereas some of the more regular meetings, planning and strategizing around the future of SEND is just starting to happen. But we just can't get away from the fact that COVID has dominated our lives. We've been involved in a huge amount of work when it comes to COVID. And I just want to draw out a few things here. We've heard very clearly from parent care reforms around the challenges that children with SEND have faced returning to school. We did a bit of work at the back end of last year, which sort of went viral. You contributed to a survey around what were the reasons why SEND children weren't in school, because the statistics were telling us, the government data was telling us that there was a significant difference between the attendance of SEND children and non-SEND children, even over and above the normal differences that we saw, but in the wake of the pandemic. And the messages that you gave us around the anxiety felt by children with SEND and the inability of schools to meet SEND needs have really made an impact. And papers that we wrote have gone all the way to the Secretary of State, and we've had discussions with the Secretary of State around what needs to be done to alleviate that anxiety and the failure of schools to meet SEND needs. Vaccinations of children and young people with SEND has also been an issue. Again, you all contributed to some surveys that we did around the causes and the reasons why you thought in your local areas the vaccination of children with SEND the uptake of vaccinations was much lower than for other children. And again, some of those messages have gone out again, and we are now seeing an uptick in the vaccination rate for children with SEND. So you told us very clearly there was just a huge lack of clarity around who's eligible for the vaccination, who should be administering and delivering that vaccination. Is it GPs? Is it through pediatricians? Is it through walk-in centres? Even things like where to get them, things like the gap between vaccinations. There was a huge lack of clarity around that. And frankly, there remains a lack of clarity. But through our work, the guidance around that has gone out again and again and again, and the system has been urged to clarify those messages to enable families with SEND to get vaccinated. We've also really pushed the message around reasonable adjustments and the anxiety many children with SEND face with vaccinations. The focus on when children return to school, the focus on the focus on a holistic well-being of children is something that we've pushed very, very hard, not just the academic well-being of children. Everybody knows about the learning loss during the period of COVID and schools being shut, but we were very strong to emphasize that actually we wanted our children feeling happy and healthy coming back into school and getting that re-entry right, with much less of a focus on academic performance and much less of a focus on behavior, and a much greater focus on just that general well-being. And that's made a real impact, and that was written into the return to school guidance, and also some really strong language and really clear messages that we put in that I'm personally very proud of, that we achieved, which is, for example, that school catch-up monies, the 1.5 billion pounds that's been made available to schools to support catch-up, explicit language that should be used for therapy services and things that support SEND children specifically, not just academic tutoring. So if you know somebody who has had catch-up therapy services, and I was speaking to a dad about 3 weeks ago, whose son has had extra speech and language therapy privately commissioned by his school. If you know anybody who's had that kind of support, that's something that we did. We're also going to be really, really honest with you and say where we don't think we've had the impact that we wanted to. So we know that there's been huge issues with transitions over the last 2 years, and annual reviews when it comes to children with SEND in the wake of COVID. To be honest, we do not think that we've made any real impact there. So there's no smoke and mirrors here. We're just going to be very, very honest with you. And that's an area we continue to work on and continue to focus on the need for much more clarity around what transitions look like in a post-COVID world and in the wake of COVID, and the fact that annual reviews seem to be a little bit rarer than hen's teeth at the minute in many areas. Moving on to the long-term plan. What have we been up to on the NHS long-term plan? Just a few things I want to draw out here. The first box there is working with our partners in the sector to make children more prominent in the health and care bill. So this is really important, and we'll touch on this a little bit more this afternoon when we talk about the SEND review, because we know that one of the failings of the current system is that services do not work together effectively. And there's a strong sense from this sector that unless there's some sort of compulsion on the new integrated care systems to prioritize children and to prioritize SEND and to work in a more integrated way for those children, we do not believe that it will happen. I'm really pleased to say that the Health Policy Influencing Group that Kay attends on our behalf has been really successful, and some new provisions have been entered into the bill that's going through Parliament at the minute, very specifically around children and more specifically around SEND. So that's really good news. We've been appointed as a strategic partner for the Learning Disability and Autism Programme for the long-term plan. And this has enabled us to really highlight things at the highest table for LDA for children in the country. So, for example, we've gone to, we've really been effective in articulating the fact that there seems to be a really schizophrenic approach in schools when it comes to children with additional needs. On one hand, you've got the behavioural hubs, which seem to be treating children as with additional needs as basically naughty boys, and it's all about discipline and leadership. On the other hand, you've got great projects like the Autism in Schools project, which is really talking about wraparound support, early intervention, and all those things that we know work. And one of the things that the LDA board is going to be doing is writing to the Department for Education, calling this out. So again, that's impact that we've had. One area that we haven't had the impact that we had hoped for was that we are painfully aware that there are huge waits for many community services, pediatricians, therapies, diagnoses for autism. It's not unusual for people to have to wait more than half a year. Sometimes, and shamefully, families are having to wait several years to get these services, particularly autism diagnoses. And this is something we've raised. And again, it's something that we've seen little progress on so far, although we have just agreed with Lorraine Mulroney, who is the SEND lead at NHS England, that she'll be coming to do a webinar in June for parent care reforms around the work that is being done to address these issues. Moving on to accountability in the SEND system. I think one of the greatest successes is that SEND is a much, much greater priority for Ofsted than it ever has been. If you read the Ofsted annual report, SEND featured very, very prominently in that, and they are calling out the same things in schools that we are. So we've had that impact. We are working very closely with Ofsted and the Care Quality Commission, both on the conclusion of the current round of local area inspections and in framing what the new round of local area inspections will look like. And one success that we mustn't forget that happened in the year, which is that we've been a member of the SEND National Trial Steering Group since the beginning. And this is the ability for the tribunal to make non-binding recommendations on health and social care. That work concluded last summer, and the powers of the tribunal have been extended. So the tribunal can continue to opine on health and social care, whereas previously it could not. The SEND review. I won't say a lot on this now because we have got a session on this afternoon. But the key message I want you to take away here is that actually it's not just the SEND review. It's actually the SEND review plus the school's white paper plus the children's social care review. We've got to think of all those three as a package coming together, because again, what schools do and what's happening in social care services is critically important to our families and our children. I won't say a lot on that this topic at the moment, other than to say that we've been, particularly in the children's social care review, we had a real coup in the sense that the key points that we had made into the social care review have been adopted in the case for change that was published last spring. And Josh McAllister, we are in contact with Josh McAllister, who leads the review, and we believe that findings will be published probably in Q1 of next year. One thing I wanted to mention very quickly is that we've also put a lot of input into various consultations. There's a list of the consultations that we've input into there. The key things that to draw out from this is just the sheer range that the consultations team has contributed to. There's also a number of consultations that we are inputting into at the moment, including the House of Lords Select Committee, which is reviewing the Children and Families Act. That's a parliamentary committee, so that's not actually formally part of the government process, but that'll be an interesting review. But I think that, frankly, it's possibly a little bit late, especially given that the SEND review is about to publish its green paper next week. Thing to note is that there'll be three other things on this list very soon, which will be the SEND green paper, the school's white paper, and the review of the children's social care. So I think the NNPCF policy team are going to be busy. All of these, you can see our responses to all of these on our website. And finally, I just wanted to touch on some of the things we're doing to improve the way we run ourselves. This may not be things that you see, but it's things that are really important to us, because one of the objectives we have as an organization is to make sure that we're robust and sustainable, and we can continue to do the work that we do in a well-ordered and purposeful fashion. So we've been really busy this year in our back office, if I can call it that. The most significant one of those is we actually started operating as an independent community interest company from the 1st of October. So we are now independent. That's taken a lot of work, and thank you to everybody in the team who have worked so very hard to do that, particularly in the management team. But we're looking more and more robust as we progress, and we're a stronger and stronger organization. So thank you for listening to me stream through all of that. I just wanted to end with the fact that we cannot do any of this without you. Local parent carer forums do everything from the sort of pastoral support for families to representing and highlighting local issues, conducting surveys, championing local co-production, working strategically across the system. And you do all of this whilst being a mum, a dad, a grandparent, or a carer, and looking after your children. And hopefully the last 2 years haven't been too grueling. You've managed to look after both yourselves and each other. And I can certainly say speak for myself and all of the NNPCF steering group when I say that, you know, it's such a pleasure and a privilege to represent you. And I'm constantly humbled by the work that you do and the passion that you show as parent care reforms. And we often talk about parent care reforms as being superheroes, and we talk about it, but you really are. And please, please, please remember that everything we do is based upon the work that you do. And without that, we're just 10 people sitting in a room talking to ourselves. Because of the work that you do, the NNPCF is actually, can honestly say, it's a representative organization, and we speak with 100,000 voices. So please, thank you for everything you do. It's not easy, but it is really, really valued by ourselves and all of our stakeholders. I'm going to now hand over to Kay, who's going to talk you through the exercises we've been doing around setting our priorities for the coming year. Kay,
Thanks, Mrunal. Good morning, everybody. It's a real joy to be with you this morning. I'm going to be co-presenting the next few slides with Heather. So I don't know if Heather wants to just say hello and introduce herself.
Kay, actually, I'm not sure that Heather is with us, because I'm not sure if you got it. She dropped us an email saying she was unwell today.
Oh, okay. I wasn't aware of that. Hadn't seen that. That's not a problem. That's not a problem. Okay. So many of you will be familiar with this slide, but we really wanted to just remind everybody of our working model within the context of setting the NNPCF priorities. And as we've already heard from Mrunal this morning, our strength as the NNPCF is really about our shared experience and how we work through at local, regional and national level to make a real change. And we do that by listening to the experiences of parent carers locally to inform our regional and national priorities, policy and practice. So Heather and I were asked by the NNPCF steering group to look at the NNPCF priorities and forum priorities to ensure that they align. We felt really strongly that we needed to undertake a survey of forums and that this would enable us to ensure that the NNPCF strategic priorities were in line with each individual forum. What's happening in local systems and what's happening on a regional and a national level. So the survey was completed by 65 forums, giving responses from across all 9 regions. And some forums had set their priorities by carrying out a survey with their own membership, and others had done it through steering group discussion that had led to setting their priorities. So from the responses then, we've identified the top 10 priorities, and they're shown on this slide. And I don't think there's any surprises there really. They stretch across education, health and social care, and from early years right through to preparing for adulthood. So these priorities are reflecting the work the forums do and the areas of priority across the country. And you can see there that the priority that's circled in red is post-16 education. And this is a reflection of the NNPCF's awareness that we could do and should do more in this area at a national level. And that's something that we're very aware of and are reflecting on as part of our work going forward. So our priorities this year, you will see that some are sort of like carried over from last year, if you like. But the NNPCF steering group and management team have also been discussing our national priorities for 22-23. And we've agreed that our priorities should be continuing to support the COVID-19 response and recovery, because we're all not out of the woods yet. And we also know that for some children and young people, actually the impact is only now being felt and seen, particularly in terms of the rise of children that are school refusing at the moment. The SEND review and wider policy, including the school's white paper and the children's social care review that Mrunal's already spoken about. and then continuing to represent STEM families in the development and implementation of the NHS long-term plan, including our LDA work, SEND work stream, and mental health and wellbeing work. We also want to ensure that SEND and parent carer voice is represented in the implementation of integrated care systems and other structural changes that are taking place within health. And that's a real challenge, I think, going forward. And as Mrunal's touched upon, through our membership of the Health and Policy Influencing Group, we have been able to have some positive results in that area. But I'm sure as ICSs are rolled out, that there'll be much more work to be done. And then finally, around improving accountability within the SEND system. So whilst we are working really hard with Ofsted and CQC to develop the next phase of local area inspections, I think it's really important to highlight that for us, accountability in the SEND system runs through every single meeting that we attend at a regional and a national level when representing the NNPCF, because it's absolutely key that all partners are held to account in terms of delivering better outcomes for children and young people with SEND. And then I'm not going to touch upon the effective operation of the CIC because Mrunal's already covered that in his slides. So this slide really was put in because we really wanted to show how many of the priorities that the forums have identified align with a number of the strategic priorities that the steering group and management team have discussed and agreed. So it really just highlights the complexity, I think, of the system in which we're all working and that families must navigate. Many of the priorities that forums have identified, we've been raising with the DfE as part of the SEND review. And we've also been working with NHS England and the Department of Health and Social Care, as Mrunal's already mentioned, to really address some of the real increasing challenges in the system around unmet need, increasing waiting times for assessments, diagnosis and therapy support. We know that at a national level, there's a real issue in terms of recruitment around therapies, for example, and we're having conversations with NHS England around that. We're also planning, as Mrunal's mentioned, to deliver a webinar in partnership with NHS England around the work that's being done to address some of these challenges, and that will be taking place in June, hopefully. And then finally, in terms of accessing short breaks, this has been raised as part of the Children's Social Care Review, and we will continue at every opportunity to push the importance of short breaks for our children and young people and families. But just to also mention that we've been working with the Disabled Children's Partnership, which you will, many of you will know is a campaign organisation, but we are working in partnership with them to raise the importance of short breaks and to provide them with additional evidence from parent carer forums. And then finally from me, forums also shared some additional thoughts. And this again shows the breadth of work the forums are engaged in and some of the challenges that we're facing locally on the ground. So it's really interesting that one of the forums responded that it was very difficult to only pick 10 priorities. And I guess that just sums up the amount of work that is going on at a local level. And then some forums reflected on capacity and the challenges to be able to address all of the issues that as local parent carer forums you would want to be addressing. And whilst you're doing that, you've also got to then balance responding to additional demands that are being placed on you from your own local areas. And that may include responding to local area accelerated progress plans or improvement plans as part of the SEND local area inspection framework. So just from me, really just to finish off by reiterating what Mrunal has said, to thank everybody for what you continue to do. You are all amazing. And from a policy and consultation lead, I just really want to thank you all for sharing your views at a regional level, because that then comes into me and enables myself and others that are working on the policy work and consultation responses to really be able to give not only the lived experiences of parents and carers, but also lots of examples of where you're working in co-production to make a change and to make a difference. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Kay. And I think that, you know, for just to cap that, I think it's really encouraging, because as Kay said, we spend a lot of, you know, the most important thing that we do in the NNPCF is to listen, and we do that through a whole variety of means, you know, from surveys to our social media groups to the conversations and regional meetings that we have with you. So please keep telling us what you're hearing, what you're seeing, what you're feeling, what the experience of families is, because it's that allows us to ask the right questions, to raise the right topics, to set the agenda at a national level. Because and it's really heartening for me to do this exercise that we just did and the survey that we did, because it does reinforce that we are, not only are you telling us what you're going through, but we are actually picking that up as well, and we have got, you know, the right priorities, and it's really encouraging that we haven't been barking up the wrong trees. We have been representing you. So thanks for that, validating that. I'm going to hand over now to Kath and Jane, who are going to talk you through some of the work we've been doing around our core principles and values.
Thanks, Mrunal. Thanks, everyone, and welcome. I think Jane is here.
Yes, I'm here.
Yourself, Jane?
Hi, I'm Jane. I'm the steering group rep for Yorkshire and Humber, and I joined in December. It's lovely to see everyone.
And I'm Kath Bromfield, and I'm the North West Steering Group member for NNPCF. Can we have the next slide, please? Oh, sorry, wait a moment. So the Menti details are up there. I'm sure lots of you know how to use Menti and are quite familiar with it now. But if you're not, you just need to put it into your phone as menti.com, and it will ask you for a code, and you can pop that up.
Just before we start the slide as well, Kath, I think, you know, Mrunal's already outlined this, but lived experience is at the heart of our organisation as collective parent forums. And, you know, that voice through consultation, what Kay's just spoke about that comes through regions, and sharing that is what's shared at national level, so that it's about better outcomes. And that is absolutely what is underlying these values and where we've come from.
And I think we've always had values in place, but it's really healthy for an organisation like ourselves, just as you do at forum level, to just check back and see if that's making sense for you. So as we come out of COVID, we wanted to take stock and look forward to the next 5 years.
And I think our plans for the last 2 years, although I've not been involved as a steering group member, I've very much been involved as a forum and at regional level. And as just like all of you, a lot of our plans were scrapped. We all went into superhero or lockdown mode and just tried to support families where we could. And interestingly as well, what I didn't realise until just recently is that most of the steering group had never even met, because they'd come on board during lockdown. Yeah, so we did meet a couple of weeks ago, but I thought I was the only one, but actually I wasn't. There's a lot of people who've not met each other.
Absolutely. So to plan for the next few years, we wanted to co-produce a refresh of our core principles, our values for the NNPCF. And as Jane said, we did that a couple of weeks ago, building on some work from yourselves.
So during January and February, we approached 55 people and organisations fed into this, and all parent carer forums were invited, national network staff, government, NHS partners, charities and other partners, just again to get a sense check of what is it. When you say NNPCF and you think of their value, our values collectively, what is it? What are the words that come to mind?
And that's quite a big bit of work. So thank you to everyone who contributed. And if you didn't get a chance to, this is why we're also revisiting it here today, so everybody gets an opportunity. So we asked them to share the key words they associate with NNPCF, their experience of the NNPCF and what the NNPCF means to them.
The next 3 slides will share the words that we used, and we're going to invite you to carry on with that, and really to, before this is signed off, really collectively we want as much voice as possible of yours in it. Kath, I do feel like we're either Chuckle Brothers or Bill and Ben. It's a bit, but that's probably
a bit of both. Probably a bit of both.
Yeah, that's probably right.
So I'm hoping you've all logged on to Menti. We had an external person help guide us through some of these conversations. And I think what I'm passionate and what I love about the NNPCF is we all come from so many different perspectives, and yet we do have those shared values, but trying to unpick them was absolutely fascinating. So on this slide here, you can see the bigger the word and the darker the print, the more it came up from our partners and ourselves when we were doing this reflection. So voice came up really strongly, experience, level, national, led, lived experience, as Jane has already said. And I hope that resonates with many of you. And so also looking at kind of how influential we were, you know, co-production, being valued, collaboration, informed, collaborative, lots of words lots of us will be really familiar with.
Yeah, and in the same way, you know, in terms of what we want in terms of the co-producing those values as well, what is it that we see and we hear? So we're going to be looking at analysis of that.
And so, as we said, we met last week. We reflected back the feedback, and actually it was really, really fascinating around our own understanding. And so that will be varied. That's as it should be.
And at the heart of that, what came through was passion. There were lots of conversation about what that word means, and again, this is about language. It's about our understanding as individual parents, as members of forums, as members of a region, as members of a national network. What does that word mean to you? What does it bring? And we wanted to make sure that the words, the language that we use reflects who we are as an organisation.
And so the 4 areas or the 4 pillars or the 4 values we felt came across really strongly from what everyone fed back was around co-production, integrity, challenging impact, and that collective lived experience.
So you helped us to define what those words are. I mean, you help us through it, not just through this exercise, but absolutely the way that we interact with each other as an organisation across the country, through our regions, the way that forums support each other, the way they support individual families, all of that, and then bringing that to region and bringing that to a national voice. So this is not just a one-off either. It's very much in terms of co-production, it's about who we are as a collective. It's about who we all are. And you helped us arrive at that. And, you know, words have meanings, and we need, as I said, language is so important, so important. We can hear the word short break and it can mean so much to someone. We definitely can hear the word passion and it means very different things to very different people. So we kind of want your help in this to tell us what these words mean to you. We've already gathered that from quite a lot of people, but we really want to take this opportunity today before this is signed off and we can move forward with this and really embed these values of what we're about collectively in. And so if you can log on to your Menti now.
If anyone's having any problems, if you pop that in the chat, we will try to help. And the first question on Menti is, what does the principle of co-production mean to the NNPCF? So we know you work at this at local level as well, but as a national organisation, what does it mean?
Because we've got co-production as one of the pillars, obviously, because what we're about. But what does, underneath that, what does that actually mean to you and in practice?
That's great. Thank you to everyone who's participating. We'll give it another minute or two, and we will also, you know, we're going to look at these afterwards as well and use that in the work we're doing. So we really do appreciate that. So love the doing with, not doing to. We've got working together coming up really strongly, which is always great to hear, because that's what we try and do. But obviously we're at a national level, that's really tricky and complicated. So that's great to hear. Thanks, Melissa. I do too. I think it's great to see it happen in front of you. The first time I used Menti, I was a little bit like, oh, it's magic. Look at that. It's fabulous. So thanks everyone for filling that in. I think a couple more people are still doing that just before we move on. But it's great to see working together and an equal voice have such a, you know, big impact to input nationally. Yeah, I heard this morning so much of what is absolutely crucial. So we'll just move on, I think, to the next slide now.
So what does the principle of integrity, or that pillar, what does that mean to us as a national network? And same again, just keep them coming.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, everyone.
A lot of these words
Really,
are what we heard.
fascinating.
There's a lot. It's great to get.
Yeah, it's great. It's really good. It's holding a mirror up to us as NNPCF.
Yeah. If you see any of the words on there as well, that
thanks everyone, keep them coming, they're great.
If you see any of the words that resonate with you, you can type them in again. That'll make the word bolder.
Really helpful, these contributions, in how we actually put meaning to those words. As Jane said, you know, we all sit in meetings where people talk about co-production and we can mean very different things, or short breaks, or any other words. But I think it's really important we own these for us. That's great. Thank you. I think everyone's had a chance to contribute. Can we move on to the next one, please?
Yeah, we're on, Kath, the next one.
Oh, my screen might have frozen, then I can't. Oh, there we go. I've only just seen it, sorry.
So what does the phrase collective
So what does...
Oh, sorry, got a bit of delay. We are Chuckle Brothers.
No, go on, Jane. I thought you frozen. Go on.
We are actually 100 miles apart. This is weird, isn't it? So what does the phrase collective lived experience mean to the NNPCF? Again, it's us as a whole organisation, with you as a lead member of that in your forum.
Great contributions, everyone. Really thought-provoking, actually.
A common voice, I love that.
Just a couple more seconds before voting closes. Thanks, everyone. Some really important sentiments put there, so that's important. Thank you.
Kath, can you see that next screen? I think she's frozen. So again, it's what does the principle...
So what does the principle, challenge and impact mean to the NNPCF? I think we've got a delay, Jane, which is brilliant. A perfect example of messy co-production. I love it.
Absolutely.
Go on, you say it.
Challenge and impact. Accountability, yeah. And as you can see from what Mrunal said earlier, that is very much at the heart of what we do and what we're about. We hear that strongly from all of you. And making a difference, because this is about the impact on our children, young people. You know, it's the so what, really, the so what of that.
Just another couple of seconds before that closes. Hold services to account, constructive discussion, motivational, speak, share, change, share. Love that. Also, the right to disagree, which I think is really, really important. That it's okay, we have different points of view, either within our forums or NNPCF and with our wider stakeholders. And that's really important. And credibility, it's a really interesting word as well. So thank you. That will inform our work as we move on.
And finally, passion. What does that principle, what does that word mean to you? When we talk about being passionate about saying we're passionate about getting better outcomes for our children and people, what does that word mean for you? We want to make sure that that reflects yes to yes. Wow, yeah. Tenacity.
Yeah, love these. Well done. Passion's really, really important to me in everything I do. So they're fabulous. Bloody awesome. I like that one.
Yeah. Fueling everything we do. Wow. Yeah.
And we'll send these out. So, you know, the conversations we're having with our local families and partners too, this helps inform some of those conversations for yourselves. Sometimes we need to see it from other people to be able to say, this is what we're saying nationally as a group of PCFs. Fire in our belly, absolutely agree.
Mm-hmm.
Could do a workshop just on this one. Brilliant. Thank you, everybody.
Before we finish, just want to say, Kath, as well, that just thank you. You know, this will all be put into a list of what these words mean, and as Kath said, it will go out to you. But I do want to say thank you, because still, regardless of what's going on with services and SEND, it's us together that actually makes a difference. For me, it's still the parent that knows what it's like to go to ASDA or sit outside ASDA because the child's having a meltdown. You know, it's that collective voice. And so I just want to reiterate what everyone else has said before and say thank you that you're keeping on doing what you're doing, because we're not only doing it for our children and people, we're doing it for each other as families and as parents. And better outcomes are realised because of it. Thank you.
Thank Jane, Kath, thank
Absolutely.
you. Yeah. I think the Chuckle Brothers thing might stick. But I think that was a really, really powerful session, and just my reflections on that, just some of the words that came up there. Passion was one we had a lot of debate about as to whether we should include it or not, but we actually did, because we felt that actually it was the heart of everything we do. The reason we do what we do is because we're passionate about it, and we're passionate about creating a better future for our children. And because let's be clear, nobody does this for the glamour or the money or the status or the prestige, and there's none of that in parent care and forum work. We all do it because we're passionate, and so that's we did put it in. It was really interesting. Actually, I was watching the results log in. We got more responses for the word passion than we did for any of the others, and also you responded more quickly. So that kind of tells me within 30 seconds, we had over 20 odd responses, whereas the others kind of ticked up a little bit more slowly. So that kind of tells me we were right to include passion, and we got some of the most interesting things there. A couple of other things that really struck out to me were the word strength came through in a few areas, and most particularly around that collective lived experience. And, you know, we are a strength to one another, both as families, as individuals, and as parent care reforms. And I think that was so nice to see. And the other thing, I think Jane touched on it, was making a difference, because that's the reason we do what we do. If nobody was listening, if we didn't feel we were making a difference, if we didn't feel it was worthwhile fighting the fight, we just wouldn't bother. There's other things that every single one of us could be doing, but we choose to do this because we believe we make a difference. And what was really interesting is in the feedback we got from external stakeholders, the word they used most was influential. One of the words they used most was influential. So that again gives us that, you know, hopefully gives us that little bit of a kick to keep going in what we're doing, because we are considered to be influential. So, but that was fantastic. As Kath and Jane said, we will send those results out with these slides. So thank you for that. That draws to a conclusion our AGM session. We are back this afternoon, where we're going to be talking a little bit about the NNPCF role in the SEND, in the creation of the SEND Green Paper, and we'll talk to you there about what we've asked for, and what we think the risks and challenges are going to be going forward. So please do join us for that. I think it's going to be really important to frame what's going to happen next week, because I think next week's going to be a really busy time for us all. But if you join us between 1 and 2 p.m. today, what we'll hopefully be able to do is equip you to deal with the publication of the SEND Green Paper next week. So thank you everybody for that. A wonderful session, and we will see you all this afternoon.